Picture this: a medieval battlefield, a storm of shouting soldiers, clashing swords, and the thunder of charging horses. But above the chaos, something else catches your eye. A sea of fluttering banners, each one emblazoned with bold, vivid symbols. These weren't just decorations, they were a silent language, a code that could mean the difference between victory and defeat. This is the world of heraldry, a forgotten system of symbols that once ruled the battlefield, whispering secrets of identity, loyalty, and strategy to those who knew how to read them. Think about it. What if you could look at a shield or a banner and instantly know not just who stood before you, but what they stood for? A golden lion roaring across a crimson field wasn't just a pretty design, it screamed courage. A black eagle spread wide wasn't mere artistry, it declared power and ambition. These symbols were a knight's resume, a family's legacy, and sometimes even a king's battle plan, all woven into colors and shapes. And here's the wildest part: this wasn't just for show. On the battlefield, where noise and confusion reigned, heraldry was the ultimate communication tool, cutting through the chaos to guide armies and announce alliances without a single word spoken. But heraldry's influence didn't stop at the edge of the battlefield. It seeped into courts, churches, and even everyday life, shaping politics, marriages, and dynasties. A well-placed symbol could secure a throne or start a war, and yet today, most of us walk past these ancient emblems in museums or castles without realizing the stories they hold. That's why we're diving deep into this lost language, to uncover how these cryptic designs dictated the fate of kingdoms and how, centuries later, they still echo in our modern world. So grab your virtual armor. We're about to decode the hidden messages of medieval heraldry, one symbol at a time. To understand how heraldry became this visual battlefield language, we have to step back to a time when knights were faceless behind their helmets. Imagine charging into combat, your vision narrowed by the slit of your visor, surrounded by identical suits of armor. How would you know friend from foe? That's where heraldry took root. By the 1200s, as plate armor advanced, knights began painting distinctive symbols on their shields and surcoats. These weren't random doodles, they were deliberate marks of identity, like medieval name tags. A knight's coat of arms became his calling card, instantly recognizable even in the dust and din of battle. But heraldry's genius went beyond simple identification. The colors and shapes followed strict rules, almost like an early form of branding. Take the bold red and gold of the House of Plantagenet or the iconic fleurs-de-lis of French royalty. These weren't just pretty patterns. They conveyed lineage, alliances, and even personal virtues. A lion might signal bravery, while a castle could represent defensive strength. Over time, these symbols grew so precise that a skilled herald could glance at a shield and recite the knight's entire family history. What's fascinating is how quickly this system spread. Unlike spoken languages which fractured across regions, heraldry became a universal code. A French knight's eagle or an English lord's stag carried the same meaning from Paris to Prague. The church played a huge role in this, using heraldry to denote religious orders and aristocratic patrons. Even tournaments, the medieval equivalent of social media, turned coats of arms into status symbols. Winning a joust under your family's banner wasn't just personal glory, it was free advertising for your dynasty's power. By the late Middle Ages, heraldry had outgrown the battlefield. It stamped seals on legal documents, adorned stained glass windows, and even dictated wedding alliances. Two noble families merging, their coats of arms would blend in a new design, a visual contract binding their futures. This wasn't just art, it was politics, diplomacy, and social climbing, all woven into a single, silent language. And though the age of armored knights faded, the legacy of these symbols endures, hidden in plain sight on flags, corporate logos, and even your family crest if you dig deep enough. Breaking down a coat of arms is like peeling back layers of a medieval story. Every element, from the boldest charge to the tiniest flourish, was packed with intention. Take the field, that sprawling canvas of color behind the symbols. This wasn't just a backdrop, it was the foundation of a family's visual identity. A solid red field screamed battlefield prowess, while a checkerboard of blue and silver hinted at strategic cunning. Then came the chargers, the icons that turned a shield into a statement. A snarling wolf, that's loyalty and vigilance. A towering oak tree, strength that endures generations. Even the simplest geometric shapes, chevrons, bends, crosses carried weight, mapping out a knight's achievements or alliances like a visual resume. But the real magic happened in the details. Position was everything. A lion standing on its hind legs, claws out, that's rampant, the posture of a warrior ready to strike, the same lion strolling calmly. Passant, a subtle flex of controlled power, and the colors far from arbitrary. Heraldry had its own strict palette, each hue loaded with meaning. Gold, or in heraldic lingo, wasn't just shiny, it shouted generosity and elevation. Red, or gules, pulsed with the energy of a soldier's courage. Even the rare fur patterns, like ermine, those tiny black tails on white, whispered nobility and purity, reserved for those who could afford such prestige. Then there's everything that framed the shield, the helmet perched above, its style revealing the wearer's rank. A barred helmet, that's nobility. The crest atop it, often an animal or object bursting with motion, was like a family's signature flourish, designed to catch the eye across a crowded tournament field. Flowing from the helmet, mantling, those intricate, leaf-like swirls started as practical cloth to shield armor from the sun, but evolved into a canvas for artistry, its cuts and colors echoing the shield's themes. And let's not forget the motto, a bite-sized declaration of values. De et mon droit, God and my right, wasn't just fancy French, it was the Plantagenets' battle cry, staking their divine claim to the throne. What's astonishing is how these rules crossed borders. A German duke and an English baron might never speak the same language, but their heraldry followed the same visual grammar. A falcon in profile versus full face could distinguish branches of a dynasty. A border of shells might hint at a pilgrimage to Santiago. This wasn't vanity, it was survival. In an era where forging documents was rampant, a coat of arms was a fraud-proof seal. Lose your land to an imposter, whip out your heraldic pedigree, verified by generations of symbols. Yet for all its rigidity, heraldry had a playful side. Canting arms puns in visual form were the medieval equivalent of a dad joke. The Fisher family might display 3 fish, the Lockwoods, a golden key, and trees. Even royalty got in on it. Catherine de' Medici's shield famously included Pill's pal in Italian, a cheeky nod to her apothecary ancestors. Behind every seemingly stern lion or stern-faced eagle, there's a human touch, pride, humor, even vulnerability. Because when you strip away the armor and the Latin mottos, heraldry was, at its heart, about people screaming into the void of history, "This is who we are." And centuries later, if we look closely, we can still hear them. Among the menagerie of heraldic symbols, 2 beasts stood above all others, the lion and the eagle, not just as decorations, but as visual proclamations of power. The lion, frozen mid-roar with claws extended in the classic rampant pose, wasn't chosen for its looks alone. This was the ultimate flex of medieval branding, a creature synonymous with raw courage and regal authority. When Richard the Lionheart stamped golden lions across his banners, he wasn't just accessorizing, he was telling every rival and ally, "This is what we're made of." The message was so potent that lions still prowl the royal arms of England today, a 1,000-year-old testament to their symbolic might. But the lion wasn't just for kings. Lesser nobles adopted it too, often tweaking the formula to signal their place in the pecking order. A single lion might mark a baron's ambition, while 3 lions passant could denote a family's layered military achievements. Even the direction the beast faced mattered. A lion in profile suggested vigilance, while one staring straight ahead dared challengers to meet its gaze. And though lions dominated Western Europe, their meaning transcended borders. From Scottish clans to Crusader knights, the lion's universal language of strength made it the medieval equivalent of a viral emblem. Then there's the eagle, a symbol so loaded with history that its very wingspan seemed to brush against the divine. Single-headed eagles evoked Roman legions, tying medieval rulers to ancient prestige. But the double-headed eagle, that was power with a capital P. When the Byzantine emperors adopted it, they weren't just decorating their shields. They were claiming to gaze simultaneously east and west, balancing earthly and heavenly rule. The Holy Roman Empire later snatched this icon, stitching it onto banners to declare, "We're the heirs to Rome and God's chosen stewards." Unlike the lion's grounded ferocity, the eagle soared with celestial ambition, its twin heads whispering of empires that stretched beyond mortal horizons. What's fascinating is how these creatures shaped real-world politics. A minor lord adding an eagle to his crest might provoke accusations of overreach, while a king omitting lions from his arms risked looking weak. Heraldry wasn't just art, it was chess played with symbols, and sometimes the animals even clashed on the battlefield. When the lion-emblazoned standards of England met the golden eagles of the Holy Roman Empire, it wasn't just armies colliding, it was a showdown of ideologies, a silent debate over which beast truly ruled the medieval world. Yet beyond the pomp, these symbols reveal something deeply human. A knight didn't just inherit his father's lion crest, he carried the weight of its expectations into every battle. An emperor gazing up at his double-headed eagle wasn't just seeing decoration, he was confronting the vastness of his own ambition. In the end, heraldry's greatest predators weren't just lions and eagles, but legacy and aspiration, forever circling the shields of those who dared to claim them. Amid the clatter of swords and the fervor of medieval faith, heraldry became more than a warrior's signature. It was a canvas for divine conviction. Take the cross, that stark intersection of lines that could morph into a dozen sacred forms. A knight bearing the jagged arms of the Maltese cross wasn't just showing off his time in Rhodes. He was stitching his combat resume to the very cloak of Christendom. The Jerusalem cross, with its 5 bold markers, didn't merely hint at a pilgrimage, it screamed, "I walked where Jesus walked, and I'll defend his legacy with steel." These weren't passive symbols, they were battle cries woven in thread and paint, declaring holy mandates that turned ordinary soldiers into crusaders and ordinary skirmishes into sacred wars. Then there's the fleurs-de-lis, that delicate trio of petals that hid a thunderclap of political theology. Its ties to the Virgin Mary weren't just poetic, they were strategic. When French kings draped their banners in these golden lilies, they weren't just honoring the Mother of Christ, they were wrapping themselves in her divine endorsement. The message was clear: our rule isn't just hereditary, it's heavenly ordained. This floral emblem grew so potent that it sprouted beyond France, clutched in the fists of everyone from Florentine bankers to Burgundian dukes, all eager to borrow a sliver of its celestial credibility. But perhaps the most personal touch came with Saint Symbol's visual shorthand for heavenly backup. A shield emblazoned with St. George's dragon wasn't just celebrating a mythical kill, it was invoking the patron saint of soldiers mid-battle, as if the warrior himself had heaven's hotline. St. Michael's scales might grace a lord's crest, whispering of justice heavier than any sword. These weren't decorations, they were divine endorsements, celestial character references meant to cow enemies and rally allies. What's startling is how these sacred symbols blurred the line between piety and propaganda. A king launching a dubious war could point to the cross on his banner and say, "God wills it," silencing doubters with celestial branding. A noble family grafting St. Peter's keys onto their coat of arms didn't just want to look holy, they were banking on the church's authority to prop up their own. This was spin doctoring with a medieval twist, where every fleur-de-lis and martyred saint's palm was a press release from the divine. Yet beneath the political calculus, there's something achingly human. A knight riding into battle under St. Christopher's image wasn't just performing piety, he was likely terrified, clinging to that symbol like a life raft. A queen embroidering her robes with Marian stars might have genuinely believed they shielded her unborn heir. Heraldry's religious motifs were armor for the soul, a way to carry faith into the fray, not just as a weapon, but as a ward against the darkness of an uncertain world. And though we've traded shields for suits and banners for logos, that hunger to weave meaning into symbols, that's one medieval instinct we've never outgrown. Amid the deafening roar of a medieval battlefield where shouted orders vanished beneath the clash of steel, heraldry became more than decoration, it was a lifeline of communication. Picture a commander straining to rally his troops through the dust and chaos. His voice might fail, but the bold crimson and gold of his standard, thrust high above the fray, cut through the confusion like a beacon. That banner wasn't just fabric, it was a rallying point, a silent shout of, "Here, hold the line." Soldiers didn't need to hear orders when they could spot their lord's colors swaying in the wind, shifting direction to signal an advance or retreat. This visual language extended to every corner of the battlefield. Knights draped in surcoats emblazoned with their arms weren't just flaunting their lineage, they were ensuring allies could recognize them in the heat of combat. A knight unhorsed and lying motionless in the mud might be anonymous in his dented armor, but the crest on his shield told his story at a glance. Was he a valuable hostage worth ransoming? A hated rival to be stripped of honors, the answer lay in those painted symbols, turning every fallen warrior into a readable page in the battle's grim ledger. Even the smallest heraldic badges played outsized roles. The White Rose of York or the Scarlet Lion of Scotland did more than adorn a soldier's sleeve. They functioned like medieval uniforms, binding mercenaries and conscripts to a common cause. In an era before standardized dress, a peasant levy might not know his duke's face, but he'd recognize that boar or crescent badge stitched onto his comrades' jackets. These symbols transformed disparate fighters into a cohesive unit, their loyalty literally pinned to their chests. Siege warfare elevated heraldry's strategic role to new heights. When a castle's defenders hoisted a flag bearing a black raven against a yellow field, it wasn't just defiance, it was a message to the attackers: we'd rather starve than yield. Conversely, a banner slowly lowered and replaced with a white stag on green might signal negotiation, sparing lives on both sides. The rules were so ingrained that breaching them, say, flying a false surrender flag, could brand a commander as dishonorable for generations. The efficiency of this system was breathtaking. Without radios or written orders, heraldry enabled precise coordination across vast, chaotic engagements. A diagonal stripe, a bend, on a shield might denote a flanking maneuver, while a chevron could signal a defensive formation. Even the colors held tactical meaning. Bright hues like red and gold were chosen not for vanity but for maximum visibility through smoke and grime. In many ways, heraldry was the medieval equivalent of a modern military's hand signals and insignia, a non-verbal code that saved countless lives amid the madness of war. Yet beyond its practicality, heraldry on the battlefield tapped into something deeper, the human need for identity under pressure. A soldier gripping his pike beneath the fluttering standard of his house wasn't just following orders, he was connecting to something larger than himself, a lineage of warriors who'd carried those same symbols before him. When the dust settled and the heralds tallied the dead, it wasn't just lives lost, it was stories woven into those fading emblems, waiting for someone to read them again. Behind every great coat of arms stood an even greater human encyclopedia, the heralds. These weren't just announcers in flashy tabards, they were walking databases of medieval social hierarchy, their minds crammed with thousands of intricate designs, lineage trees, and the subtle rules governing who could display what. Imagine the pressure: one misidentified crest at a royal tournament, and you could spark a feud between noble houses that lasted decades. Heralds carried that weight daily, their expertise turning them into respected arbiters of aristocratic identity. When two knights quarreled over who had the right to bear 3 golden crescents on a blue field, it wasn't swords that settled the dispute, it was a herald's pronouncement, backed by generations of precedent. Tournaments showcase heralds at their most theatrical. As armored combatants thundered toward each other, the herald didn't just shout names, he performed genealogical epics. Sir Henry of House Beaumont, grandson of the Lion of Anjou, bearer of the azure shield with silver stars, this wasn't vanity, it was strategic branding. By reciting a knight's lineage, the herald linked the fighter to past glories, raising the stakes of every joust. The crowd didn't just see two men clashing, they witnessed living chapters of family sagas colliding. Heralds turned combat into narrative, their voices weaving chivalric drama that kept nobles and peasants alike riveted. War revealed heralds' darker, more vital role. Clad in distinct, neutral-colored surcoats, they moved fearlessly between enemy camps, their persons sacrosanct under medieval law. A king might reject a diplomat's plea, but refusing a herald's parley risked divine wrath and social ostracism. These men negotiated ceasefires to retrieve the dead, delivered ultimatums without flinching, and sometimes, with a well-timed announcement of reinforcements, turned the tide of battles without drawing a sword. Their neutrality was so ironclad that during the 100 Years' War, French and English heralds dined together mid-conflict, comparing notes like scholars rather than enemies. But their quietest work was preservation. In an age before photography, heralds meticulously documented coats of arms in armorials, lavish manuscripts that became the medieval equivalent of copyright registries. Every dent in a shield's design, every tweak to a crest's color was logged with monastic precision. This archival obsession saved heraldry from descending into chaos. Without heralds enforcing rules against copycat designs or overambitious upstarts slapping lions on their shields, the system would have collapsed under its own weight. What's astonishing is how these men, often of humble birth, wielded soft power that rivaled kings. A noble might command armies, but only a herald could declare his marriage alliance invalid because the bride's family had misused an ermine pattern in their arms. Their knowledge made them indispensable advisors, whispering which symbols would impress allies or provoke rivals. And though the age of armored combat faded, heralds endure today in institutions like London's College of Arms, still arbitrating genealogical disputes with the same gravity as their medieval predecessors. They remind us that behind every symbol screaming from a banner, there was a human voice keeping its meaning alive. In a world where history often remembers men in armor, heraldry quietly preserved the stories of women who shaped dynasties not with swords, but with strategic marriages and unbroken bloodlines. When a noblewoman wed, her coat of arms didn't vanish. It folded into her husband's shield like a living contract. Take the iconic quartered design, 4 alternating sections, 2 bearing his symbols, 2 displaying hers. This wasn't just decorative, it was a visual merger of power, announcing to the world that 2 families now shared land, influence, and legacy. The De Clare heiresses of England didn't just bring castles to their marriages, their golden chevrons stretched across new shields, ensuring their lineage shouted from battlements for generations. But some women went further, wielding heraldry as a personal manifesto. Joan of Arc's arms, a sword piercing a crown, flanked by fleurs-de-lis, defied every convention. Granted not through birth or marriage but by a king's gratitude, they screamed what no woman of her time could openly claim: martial prowess and divine sanction. Even more astonishing, she likely never carried them into battle. Their power was symbolic, a crack in heraldry's male-dominated armor proving that exceptions could become legends. Less flashy but equally revolutionary were the lozenges, diamond-shaped coats of arms reserved for unmarried women and widows. Without husbands to absorb their identities, these designs let women project authority solo. Margaret Beaufort, mother of Henry VII, used hers to telegraph political savvy, embedding Tudor roses long before her son seized the throne. And in Spain, Isabella of Castile didn't just share her quartered arms with Ferdinand. She insisted they be displayed equally, a visual echo of her famous co-rule. What's easily missed is how subtly these symbols shifted power. An heiress's arms inherited by her children could quietly overwrite a dynasty's identity. The mighty Neville family's silver saltire faded as their daughters married into new houses, each child's shield diluting the original design. Over centuries, these silent mergers rewrote noble pedigrees, proving that while men fought battles, women often redrew the map's 1 quartered crest at a time. Yet heraldry also betrayed the era's limits. A widow might reclaim her maiden arms, but only if she outlived her husband. Divorced women vanished from the heraldic record entirely. And for every Joan of Arc, countless women saw their symbols reduced to decorative flourishes on their spouses' achievements. Still, the exceptions resonate. When Elena of Aquitaine's golden lions marched onto the Plantagenet shield, they weren't just decoration, they were a reminder that behind every great dynasty stood women whose legacies, though often unspoken, were literally emblazoned in history. Dive into the vibrant world of heraldic colors, where every shade was a loaded statement, not just a decorative choice. Picture a knight's shield awash in gules. That deep, fiery red wasn't picked because it looked striking against steel. It pulsed with the energy of sacrifice and unyielding courage, evoking martyr's blood or the unchecked fury of a warrior in the thick of battle. When crusaders marched under scarlet banners, they weren't just coordinating outfits, they were wrapping themselves in a visual promise: we fight with heaven's fire in our veins. Then there's azure, that rich blue that seemed to pull the sky itself onto cloth and metal. More than just a pleasing hue, it whispered of steadfast loyalty and unshakable truth, qualities any lord wanted his vassals to associate with his name. A castle gate painted with azure stripes wasn't just pretty, it declared, "Enter here and find honor within." Contrast that with sable, the stark black that could mean 2 very different things depending on context. On one shield, it might signal resilience, the unbroken spirit of a family that had weathered sieges and famines. On another, it spoke of mourning, a noble house marking the loss of a beloved patriarch or a fallen heir. Green or vert brought the earthy vitality of the natural world into heraldry's rigid rules. Forests, fields, and the promise of renewal clung to this color. A knight bearing vert might be staking his identity to the land he protected, or subtly signaling hope, perhaps for a son's safe return from war, or for a barren estate to flourish again. And let's not forget the metals, those radiant exceptions to heraldry's color palette. Gold or wasn't just about wealth, it shimmered with the divine right of kings, a visual echo of the sun's unchallengeable authority. Silver, argent, gleamed with purity, not just of bloodline but of intention, often reserved for those who claimed moral clarity in murky political waters. What's fascinating is how these colors interacted. Pair gules with argent, and you got a shield that screamed, "I'll spill blood for righteousness." Combine azure and ore, and suddenly you're looking at a declaration of loyalty crowned with power. The rules were so precise that certain combinations were avoided: no metal on metal, no color on color, to ensure clarity across a smoky battlefield. This wasn't just aesthetics, it was practical psychology. A banner's colors needed to strike the eye instantly, cutting through chaos to convey allegiance or ambition before a single sword was raised. Yet beyond their battlefield utility, these hues carried personal narratives. The black raven on a yellow field in one family's arms might memorialize an ancestor who triumphed at dusk, while another's crimson and white stripes could encode a miracle from the Crusades. Even the rarest shades, like purpure royal purple, so costly it was almost mythical, telegraphed aspirations. When a minor baron snuck it into his crest, it wasn't just pretension. It was a bid to be seen as more than he was, a visual gamble that could elevate or embarrass. In the end, heraldry's colors were alchemy, transforming simple pigments into a language of identity, ambition, and memory. They remind us that long before Pantone codes and branding guides, medieval Europe was already mastering the art of speaking through shades, one bold, symbolic stroke at a time. While lions and eagles dominated the heraldic stage, a whole menagerie of creatures lurked in the margins of medieval shields, each with their own coded meaning. Take the bear, a mountain of muscle often depicted standing upright, claws bared. This wasn't just a fearsome predator, it was a carefully chosen emblem of raw strength tempered by protectiveness. The bear's habit of shielding its cubs made it a favorite among noble houses who wanted to project both power and paternal care. Picture the arms of the mighty Earls of Warwick, a silver bear chained to a ragged staff, a nod not just to physical might but to the unbreakable bonds of feudal loyalty. Then there's the wolf, its lean silhouette howling across countless crests. Unlike the lion's noble ferocity, the wolf spoke of strategic cunning, a creature that thrived through patience and pack tactics. When Florentine banking families adopted wolves, they weren't celebrating savagery. They were advertising their sharp-eyed ability to navigate the financial wilderness. Even the wolf's posture told a story. A lone wolf in profile suggested vigilance, while a pair of wolves rampant mirrored the teamwork of allied clans. But perhaps the most poignant creature was the pelican, often shown pecking its own breast to feed its chicks with blood. This grotesque yet tender image became the ultimate emblem of sacrifice, cherished by religious orders and crusader knights alike. A pelican on a shield didn't just decorate, it testified. We bleed for those we protect. The metaphor ran so deep that medieval universities still use the pelican in their seals today, a silent tribute to the sacrifices of knowledge. Mythical beasts cranked the symbolism to legendary heights. Dragons weren't just fire-breathing monsters, they were paradoxes of destruction and wisdom, coiled around shields to declare, "Cross us at your peril." The Welsh flaunted theirs in red, a defiant reminder that their culture outlasted Rome. Griffins, with their eagle's head and lion's body, merged the king of beasts with the king of birds, a hybrid reserved for those claiming near-divine status. Even the humble salamander, often shown engulfed in flames yet unharmed, whispered of resilience, a favorite among artillery commanders who worked with gunpowder. What's striking is how these creatures transcended geography. A Scottish clan's boar and a German duke's stag carried similar meanings: unyielding toughness and noble independence, despite being separated by language and landscape. Heraldry's animal code became a cross-border dialect, where a well-chosen beast could telegraph values faster than any ambassador. And though the age of armored combat faded, these creatures still prowl modern insignia, from corporate logos to military patches, proving that the medieval language of symbols never truly went extinct, it just evolved. Amid the swords and shields of heraldry, plants quietly staked their claim, rooting noble families not just to land, but to the very soil of their identity. The Tudor rose stands as history's most famous floral diplomat, its intertwined red and white petals stitching together the warring houses of Lancaster and York after decades of bloodshed. This wasn't just a pretty peace offering. It was propaganda in bloom, a living emblem that screamed unity even when old grudges simmered beneath. With a single hybrid flower, the Tudors turned botanical symbolism into political alchemy, grafting reconciliation onto England's collective memory. But roses weren't the only flora flexing political muscle. North of the border, Scotland's thistle, spiky, unpretentious, and fiercely resilient, became a national badge of defiance. Legend claims it earned its place when a barefoot Norse invader yelped after stepping on one, alerting defenders to a midnight attack. True or not, the story captures the thistle's spirit, a weed-turned warrior, proof that even the humblest plant could thorns its way into legend. Unlike the cultivated rose, the thistle was democratic, a symbol that resonated with lairds and peasants alike, its prickly pride mirroring Scotland's stubborn independence. Then there's the wheat sheaf, or garb, a golden bundle that transformed agricultural wealth into heraldic prestige. For families like the Grosvenors of England, stacks of grain weren't just about harvests, they were declarations of rooted power, the quiet might of those who controlled the breadbasket of a region. A lord's castle might impress, but a shield dripping with golden sheaves whispered, "We don't just rule this land, we feed it." In an era where famine lurked around every winter, this was status written in stalks and seeds. Victory, too, had its foliage. Laurel wreaths borrowed from Roman triumphs curled around the crests of military dynasties, their evergreen leaves telegraphing unbroken success. Unlike the fleeting glory of a battlefield cheer, heraldic laurels were permanent, etched into stone above doorways, embroidered into funeral palls, a reminder that valor outlasted the moment. The Dukes of Marlborough, fresh from Blenheim's triumphs, wreathed their arms in laurel, turning a general's fleeting fame into a family's enduring brand. Yet heraldry's plants weren't just about grandeur. The oak tree, gnarled and steadfast, spoke of lineage deeper than any parchment, its roots twisted into shields as a promise: we endure. For families like the German von Eycken, the oak wasn't just a symbol, it was a namesake and a covenant, tying them to ancestral forests where their power first took root. Even the lowly hemp plant found its way onto the crest of paper-making dynasties, a nod to the humble fibers that underpinned their wealth. What's striking is how these botanical choices mirrored their bearers. The fleur-de-lis's elegance suited French royalty's cultivated image, while the pine, ricinus and unyielding, adorned alpine lords who weathered mountain winters. Plants grounded abstract virtues in the tangible, a vine's tenacity, an olive branch's peace, even a nettle's defiant sting looking at you, Scottish Mackenzies. Unlike animals, which often symbolized singular traits, Flora allowed for layered meanings. A rose could be beauty and danger, an oak strength and continuity. This vegetal vocabulary endures. Modern logos still pluck from heraldry's garden. Tech firms use laurels for innovation. Banks adopt oaks for stability. When we see a nation's flag sprouting a maple leaf or a wheat stalk, we're glimpsing the old language of heraldry, still whispering that to root oneself in symbols is to claim a piece of eternity. After all, empires fall and castles crumble, but as any herald knew, a well-chosen flower or tree, that's legacy that outlives stone. Stripes, checks, and zigzags might seem like simple decorations, but in heraldry, these geometric shapes were power moves in disguise. Take the bend, that bold diagonal stripe slicing across a shield. Far from random, this was the medieval equivalent of a tactical arrow, signaling momentum and forward thrust. When the de Bohun family emblazoned their arms with a bright blue bend, they weren't just accessorizing, they were telegraphing their role as the spearhead of an attack, the first line crashing into enemy formations. The angle itself whispered movement, as if the shield was already in motion, carrying its bearer toward victory. Then there's the chevron, that sharp inverted V resembling a rooftop or an arrowhead. This wasn't just architectural flair, it was a badge of protection, echoing the rafters that sheltered a lord's hall or the defensive wedge of a shield wall. Families like the Cliffords adopted it as a visual promise. Under our watch, you're covered. The steeper the angle, the more it implied unyielding defense. A shallow chevron might suggest strategic flexibility. Even the chevron's position told a story. Placed high on the shield, it hinted at celestial favor. Low, it rooted the bearer's strength in earthly foundations. But perhaps the cleverest geometric play was the checkerboard, or chequy pattern, a grid of alternating colors that turned a shield into a battlefield chessboard. The Warren Earls of England wielded this design not just for visibility, though the stark contrast certainly helped on smoky battlefields, but as a metaphor for foresight. Each square mirrored the calculated moves of a grandmaster, where territory and tactics decided fates. In an era when nobles literally played chess to train for war, the chequy shield was a walking declaration. We think 3 steps ahead. Even the simplest bars carried weight. A horizontal stripe or fess often represented the military baldric, that belt slung across a knight's chest holding his sword. Displaying it on a shield was like wearing your readiness on your sleeve, a constant reminder that the bearer was girded for combat. Thicken that fess into a bar jamel, twin stripes, and suddenly it's a bridge, symbolizing a family's role as connectors between realms or factions. The variations were endless, wavy lines for maritime power, jagged edges for resilience, even interlocking rings to advertise unbreakable alliances. What's fascinating is how these abstract shapes crossed language barriers. A German knight's saltire, that X-shaped cross, conveyed the same martial resolve as a Scottish clan's despite their differing tongues. Geometry became universal shorthand, where a French chevron and an Italian poly vertical stripes could converse without words. This visual efficiency made heraldry indispensable. Where oral commands failed in the din of battle, a glimpse of a zigzag or checkered pattern could relay orders instantly. Yet beyond practicality, these patterns reveal medieval mindsets. A lord choosing lozenges, diamond shapes over crosses wasn't just picking aesthetics. He might be signaling commercial acumen, as the diamond echoed textile trade patterns. Even today, these ancient designs persist in unexpected places. The checkered flag of racing, the stripes of national flags, the angles of corporate logos. They remind us that long before modern branding, warriors and rulers knew the power of a well-placed line. proof that sometimes the simplest shapes carry the sharpest meanings. Walk through the arched gateway of any medieval castle, and you'll find yourself face to face with a silent herald, the coat of arms chiseled into the stone above you. These weren't mere decorations, they were the architectural equivalent of a noble's signature, etched permanently into the bones of the building. When the De Vere family stamped their blue boar onto the lintels of Hedingham Castle, they weren't just marking territory, they were embedding their lineage into the very walls, ensuring every visitor from peasant to king would remember who held power here. The stones might outlast the family's reign, but their symbols would keep their name alive in the collective memory long after their bloodline faded. Cathedrals elevated heraldry to celestial heights. Stained glass windows transformed sunlight into a kaleidoscope of ancestral pride, with vibrant shields suspended in midair like frozen bursts of dynastic glory. At Canterbury Cathedral, the Beauchamp Chapel glows with golden bears chained to ragged staves, each pane a luminous chapter in a family's saga. Donors who funded these holy spaces didn't just seek divine favor, they negotiated for prime symbolic real estate. A stained glass coat of arms positioned near the altar wasn't just art. It was a perpetual prayer, whispering a family's name into the ears of saints with every shaft of colored light. Even the most functional elements got the heraldic treatment. Gargoyles, those grotesque rain spouts, often morphed into heraldic beasts mid-snarl. A dragon with a noble house's scales, a lion with a familiar mane twist, even a pelican in piety perched on a parapet. These weren't random monsters. They were identity made monstrous, a way to ensure that even the runoff from a storm cascaded from the jaws of a family's emblem. The message was clear: we protect, we intimidate, and we endure stone by stone. The most cunning heraldic displays played with scale and surprise. Tiny crests hidden in ceiling bosses rewarded the observant with a noble's inside joke. A knight's effigy might clasp a shield to his chest but peek beneath his marble feet, and you'd find his hound forever trampling the arms of a rival. Even floor tiles join the conversation. Encaustic pavements in Westminster Abbey still bear the 3 lions of England underfoot, a literal walk over royal authority with every step. What's striking is how these architectural choices transcended mere vanity. In an age before photography or widespread literacy, buildings became memory palaces. A merchant entering a guild hall saw the patron's arms and knew whom to thank or fear. A peasant gazing up at a castle gate recognized the boar or bear overhead as surely as we'd recognize a corporate logo today. And when rival families intermarried, their merged arms carved into fireplace mantles turned domestic spaces into living treaties, stone diplomacy that warmed both hands and alliances. Yet beyond politics, there's something profoundly human in these carvings. A worn step in a chapel, trodden smooth by generations of pilgrims, might frame a barely visible crest, a humble bid for immortality. A crumbling tower's last standing arch, still defiantly clutching its heraldic rose, whispers that even as mortar fails, symbols persist. Long after the last knight rode to war, these stone emblems keep their vigil, proving that while swords rust and parchments fade, identity carved in stone is the last thing to surrender. The thunder of cannon fire didn't just shatter castle walls, it cracked the very foundation of heraldry's golden age. As gunpowder smoke choked battlefields in the 16th century, the once indispensable language of shields and banners began to flicker. Why signal loyalty with a colorful standard when musket volleys could strike from 300 paces away? A knight's gleaming coat of arms, painstakingly embroidered with lions or eagles, became little more than a target for sharpshooters. The Battle of Pavia in 1525 delivered the starkest proof. The flower of French nobility, their heraldry proudly displayed, fell to Spanish arquebusiers who couldn't have cared less about the symbolism on their enemies' surcoats. War had industrialized, and the age of personal battlefield branding was bleeding out. Yet heraldry's decline wasn't just about technology. It was about identity itself shifting beneath the feet of Europe's elite. The rise of nation-states turned feudal lords into bureaucrats, their power measured in tax rolls rather than armored retainers. Why fuss over a family crest when kings like Louis XIV demanded all glory flow to the Sun King's court? The very concept of nobility was being standardized, with patents of aristocracy replacing the old system where a well-placed charge on your shield could imply ancient lineage. Even the language of heraldry, once as precise as legal code, started to sound like a fading dialect. Enlightenment philosophers like Voltaire smirked at coats of arms as the delusions of men who mistake embroidery for history. But here's the twist: heraldry didn't so much die as shapeshift. Stripped of its battlefield purpose, it became the ultimate aristocratic heirloom, a stubborn keepsake of a vanishing world. Old families, now more likely to duel with lawsuits than lances, clung to their armorial bearings like drowning men to driftwood. Institutions that thrived on tradition, universities, guilds, cathedrals, kept the flame alive. Oxford's colleges still debate heraldic precedents at graduation ceremonies, as if the Wars of the Roses never ended. The Vatican's Swiss Guard parades in Renaissance-era tabards blazoned with stripes and stars, a living museum of martial symbolism. Meanwhile, heraldry's DNA seeped into modernity. Napoleon, that upstart artillery officer turned emperor, couldn't resist designing new coats of arms for his freshly minted nobles, proof that even revolutions borrow from the past they claim to overthrow. Industrial titans like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers adopted heraldic motifs for their mansions, trading castles for boardrooms but keeping the lions and eagles as psychological armor. Today, every corporate logo with a crest or stylized beast, from the prancing horse of Ferrari to the twin-tailed mermaid of Starbucks, owes a debt to those medieval artisans who first turned symbols into power. Even the military, which abandoned heraldry for camouflage, quietly resurrected its principles. Unit patches on modern combat uniforms function like miniature coats of arms, their colors and shapes telegraphing history and ethos at a glance. The screaming eagle of the 101st Airborne or the crossed sabers of cavalry regiments are direct descendants of the medieval herald's craft, just printed on nylon instead of embroidered on silk. What's poignant is how heraldry's twilight reveals our enduring hunger for symbols. The same Enlightenment thinkers who mocked noble crests designed seals for their new republics, cramming them with eagles, pyramids, and Latin mottos. We may no longer recognize sable from vert, but we instinctively understand that a golden arch means fast food and a bitten apple means innovation. The knights are gone, but their visual language, that primal need to declare, "This is who we are in shapes and colors," still pulses beneath the surface of our hyper-digital age. Like a faded fresco revealing itself beneath stripped wallpaper, heraldry reminds us that some codes are too deeply written to ever fully erase. Look at any modern flag flapping in the wind or the logo emblazoned on your coffee cup, and you're staring at heraldry's living grandchildren. That golden lion rearing up on England's football crest, it's a direct descendant of the Plantagenet king's battle standards, stripped of its armor but still roaring with the same regal defiance. The American bald eagle gripping arrows and an olive branch, a medieval double-headed eagle in democratic disguise, trading imperial crowns for the quiet authority of a nation-state. Even the sleek logos of tech giants play by heraldry's ancient rules. Apple's bitten fruit isn't just branding. It's counting arms for the digital age, a visual pun as deliberate as any medieval lord's fish-shaped shield. Sports teams have become the new nobility, their mascots and colors functioning like dynastic heraldry for the masses. The Chicago Bears' snarling Bruin mirror the bear-clad crests of Swiss cantons, while soccer clubs like Juventus literally wear striped medieval heraldry on their jerseys. These symbols tap into the same tribal loyalty that once made knights charge into battle under their lord's banner. When fans paint their faces in team colors or tattoo logos on their skin, they're replicating the fervor of peasants sewing their lord's badge onto their tunics, proof that the human need to belong to something larger hasn't faded, just found new battlefields in stadiums. Superheroes take this personal heraldry to mythic extremes. Batman's black bat isn't just intimidation, it's a classic heraldic charge, as deliberate as any knight's lion. The House of L's stylized S shield functions like Kryptonian nobility's coat of arms, its alien glyphs carrying the weight of a lost dynasty. Even Captain America's star-spangled uniform follows heraldic logic, bold primary colors for visibility, a central emblem for instant recognition, all designed to cut through chaos like a crusader's surcoat. These modern myths prove we still crave symbols that distill identity into primal, instantly readable icons. Corporate branding teams might not study medieval armorials, but they've internalized their lessons. Starbucks' twin-tailed mermaid, a siren straight from a 15th century nautical crest, repurposed to whisper of seafaring tradition in every latte. The interlocking rings of the Olympics, heraldic pageantry on a global scale, where nations compete under flags that are essentially coats of arms for entire cultures. Even military insignia, from the screaming eagles of airborne divisions to the crossed sabers of cavalry, preserve heraldry's original purpose: to declare allegiance and ethos at a glance across the smoke of modern battlefields. What's fascinating is how these symbols shed their medieval trappings while keeping the core language intact. The red and white target of Target stores uses the same high-contrast logic as a knight's gules and argent shield, visible from across a crowded marketplace just as it once was on a chaotic battlefield. Luxury brands like Versace's Medusa head or Rolls-Royce's Spirit of Ecstasy aren't just logos, they're modern crests, leveraging mythology and craftsmanship to imply lineage where none exists. Even protest movements adopt heraldic thinking: the raised fist, the pink triangle, the rainbow flag, all functioning like rebel heraldry, broadcasting identity and intent without a word. This isn't nostalgia, it's neurological wiring. Heraldry thrived because it exploited how our brains process symbols fast, emotionally, and indelibly. A well-designed logo or flag triggers the same instant recognition that saved lives on medieval battlefields. The difference: instead of distinguishing allies from enemies in war, today's heraldry helps us navigate supermarkets or social media tribes. The language hasn't faded, it's evolved, proving that after 8 centuries we still speak in the vibrant vocabulary of shields and sigils. We've just traded parchment for pixels and lances for likes. The Habsburg double-headed eagle wasn't just a majestic bird, it was a geopolitical manifesto in feathers, with one head gazing west toward Europe and the other east toward Byzantium. This creature embodied the dynasty's audacious claim to straddle continents and inherit Rome's legacy. Every detail carried weight. The golden scepters clutched in its talons whispered of dual sovereignty, while the crowns piled atop its heads counted conquered kingdoms like notches on a sword. When Charles V added the Pillars of Hercules to his crest with the motto plus ultra, further beyond, he wasn't decorating stationery. He was announcing Spain's imperial destiny, turning Columbus's voyages into heraldic real estate. Then there's the Medici's seemingly simple red balls or pal, scattered across their shield like dropped apples. These weren't just convenient shapes for a banker's ledger. They were a visual pun on both medicine, nodding to their apothecary roots, and coins celebrating their financial empire. The numbers shifted over generations from 12 to 6 to 5, each reduction marking a strategic marriage or consolidation of power. That one defiant blue ball with 3 golden lilies. A royal favor from France, stitched into their arms like a VIP pass to European high society. The Medici understood something modern brands pay millions to learn. Symbols distill ambition into retina-seizing shorthand. Across the Channel, England's 3 golden lions on crimson, technically leopards in heraldic terms, tell a story of Norman conquest and PR spin. William the Conqueror's descendants kept the 2 lions of Normandy, but added a third, creating a hybrid emblem that screamed, "We've expanded the portfolio." The fleurs-de-lis later sprinkled among them weren't floral decor. They were real estate deeds in petal form, asserting claims to French soil that would spark 100 years of war. Every time an English king stamped this design onto treaties or banners, he wasn't just signing his name. He was replaying the original sales pitch for his dynasty's legitimacy. France's own azure shield, thick with golden lilies, reveals how symbols can turn fragile authority into divine right. Early Capetian kings used just a scattering of fleurs-de-lis, but by the 14th century, the entire field shimmered with them, a visual inflation mirroring their centralized power. The shift from the same sprinkled pattern to the 3-lily design under Charles V wasn't aesthetic minimalism. It was monarchical branding, streamlining the message like a royal logo update. That these flowers likely represented not lilies but the iris, a symbol of the Virgin Mary, shows the genius of sacred adjacency, earthly power borrowing heaven's glow. Even the humble griffin of Pomerania, a lesser-known but fiercely proud duchy, packed meaning into every claw. This hybrid beast, part eagle, part lion, declared its rulers worthy of both aerial and terrestrial dominion, while the red-gold color scheme shouted imperial ambitions. When the griffins added a crown in the 1500s, it wasn't vanity. It was a carefully timed flex during the Protestant Reformation, asserting their right to rule church lands. Their crests supporting figures, a wild man and a monk, framed the ultimate medieval humblebrag. We're both warrior and scholar, primal and pious. What unites these designs is their ruthless efficiency as propaganda. Unlike speeches that fade or documents that mold, coats of arms hammered messages into the collective subconscious through sheer repetition. Every embroidered banner, carved gate, and wax seal was a miniature billboard for dynastic mythmaking. The Tudors' rose wasn't just pretty, it overwrote decades of civil war with a single floral emblem. The Habsburgs' eagle didn't just perch on shields, it implanted the idea of inevitability across a dozen realms. And when Napoleon later crowned his own eagle with the jewels of Charlemagne, he proved that even revolutions can't resist heraldry's spell, the ultimate complement to a visual language that outlasted the very knights who invented it. When J.R.R. Tolkien sketched the White Tree and 7 stars of Gondor's banner, he wasn't just doodling, he was weaponizing 8 centuries of heraldic tradition to make Middle-earth feel as real as medieval Europe. The stewards of Gondor's flag follows strict heraldic grammar, the argent-white field symbolizing purity, the stylized tree echoing the lineage trees of noble houses, even the crownless state hinting at a throne in waiting. Tolkien, an Oxford scholar steeped in Norse sagas and chivalric romances, knew these visual cues would whisper ancient kingdom to our subconscious before a single line of dialogue was spoken. George R.R. Martin took this playbook and drenched it in blood and intrigue. The direwolf of House Stark isn't just a cool logo, it's a heraldic time bomb, its meaning shifting from familial pride to vengeful omen as the story unfolds. Martin mirrors real medieval symbolism where animals represented virtues but then twists the knife. The Lannister lion, traditionally a mark of courage, becomes ironic commentary on a family rotting from within. Even minor houses get this treatment. The flayed man of House Bolton isn't random shock value, it's classic counting arms, the name Bolton suggesting bolt-on skin, taken to grotesque extremes that would make actual medieval heralds recoil. Harry Potter's Hogwarts houses prove heraldry's adaptability. Each founder's emblem, Gryffindor's gold lion on scarlet, Slytherin's silver serpent on emerald, could have been lifted straight from a 13th century roll of arms. The colors aren't arbitrary. Gold and red historically denote courage and sacrifice, perfect for Godric's warriors, while green and silver whispered aristocratic ambition long before Salazar Slytherin coiled his snake around them. Even the badgers and ravens of Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw follow heraldic conventions where humble animals symbolize undervalued strength, loyalty, and wisdom, respectively. Video games have weaponized these symbols for instant world building. The Elder Scrolls' Imperial Dragon Crest does in pixels what the Holy Roman Empire's eagle did on parchment, legitimizing power through antiquity. Witcher heraldry, from the Wolf School medallion to Nilfgaard's golden sun, feels authentic because it mirrors the Polish heraldic tradition where simple geometric charges dominated. Even Overwatch's character designs follow heraldic logic. Reinhardt's lion helmet and Bridget's crossed hammers function like knightly crests, communicating roles at a glance amid combat chaos. What's fascinating is how these modern creators intuitively grasp heraldry's core superpower: visual storytelling. A Game of Thrones fan doesn't need exposition to know House Baratheon's crowned stag represents usurped royalty, any more than a medieval peasant needed Latin to understand a shield with 3 lions meant the English king. By dressing fantasy in heraldry's skin, writers and artists tap into a primal language where symbols bypass logic to strike straight at our emotions. The white cloak of a Kingsguard or the flaming heart of the Lord of Light carry weight because somewhere in our cultural memory, we recognize these as heirs to the Crusader's cross and the martyr's badge. Yet the best fictional heraldry adds fresh twists. The Hunger Games Mockingjay pin transforms from rebel symbol to propaganda tool, mirroring how medieval coats of arms were co-opted and altered during wars. Dune's Red Hawk of House Atreides nods to heraldry while transcending it. The creature isn't embroidered but genetically engineered, blending medieval symbolism with sci-fi possibility. Even Pokemon's gym badges function as pocket heraldry. Their designs a rainbow for diversity, a boulder for resilience, teaching values through symbols just as a squire learned from his lord's crest. This isn't nostalgia, it's neurological efficiency. Our brains process images 60,000 times faster than text, and fantasy worlds leverage this. When Daenerys Targaryen's 3-headed dragon banner unfurls, we instantly grasp centuries of backstory, ambition, legacy, and the terror of fire made flesh. No exposition needed. That's the genius modern creators borrowed from medieval heralds, the power to compress epic narratives into a single, unforgettable image, ensuring their stories stick in our minds long after the book is closed or the screen goes dark. Think heraldry was just knights and nobility flexing their pedigree. Think again. While castles and crowns dominate our mental images, the truth is far more democratic. Medieval merchants and bustling towns proudly sported their own coats of arms too. Take London's ancient crest, a sword-wielding saint atop a field of blood-red crosses. This wasn't aristocratic posturing, it was civic pride etched in symbols, declaring the city's mercantile muscle and divine protection. Across Europe, guilds from wool traders to wine merchants commissioned arms, turning heraldry into the ultimate small business branding. The fishmongers of Paris flaunted silver salmon on azure, while Florentine bankers stamped ledgers with golden florins, proof that money could buy visual legitimacy long before corporate logos existed. Then there's the myth that heraldry was all snarling beasts and blood-stained weapons. Peace had its place in this visual language too. The Zwin family of Flanders chose a gentle swan for their crest, its wings arched protectively, a far cry from battlefield aggression. Ecclesiastical heraldry brimmed with doves, lambs, and olive branches, turning shields into sermons. Even warrior clans sometimes softened their image. The Scottish Maxwell's shield featured a checkered pattern said to represent reconciliation after a feud. These quieter symbols remind us that heraldry wasn't just about conquest. It could whisper of piety, diplomacy, or hopes for harmony in fractured times. Flexibility was heraldry's secret superpower. Purists might paint it as frozen in time, but the evidence shouts otherwise. When gunpowder reshaped warfare, cannons began blasting their way onto crests, like the Schwarzenberg family's smoking mortar celebrating their artillery triumphs. The age of exploration sent pineapples, maize, and even armadillos crawling into heraldic designs as nobles scrambled to showcase their New World connections. Pope Leo X, that Medici pontiff with a taste for exoticism, famously added a Hindu elephant to his personal arms after receiving one as a gift. This adaptability turned heraldry into a living scrapbook of cultural change, where a single shield could archive everything from technological leaps to global encounters. Perhaps the most persistent fallacy is that heraldic rules were ironclad. In reality, creative loopholes abounded. Difference marks, small stars, crescents, or borders let younger sons tweak their father's arms without starting from scratch. Ambitious upstarts bent conventions too. When the Fugger banking family bought their way into nobility, they didn't just adopt existing symbols, they crafted a brand new lily design to avoid looking like copycats. Even the church played fast and loose, granting special dispensations for hybrid arms when political marriages required diplomatic blending of symbols. What's revealing is how these misconceptions mirror our modern biases. We assume the past was less nuanced than our era, that medieval people didn't understand branding or soft power. But the merchant's crest advertising his wares, the olive branch signaling truce, the cannon celebrating innovation, they all prove heraldry was as multifaceted as the humans who wielded it. The next time you see an ancient coat of arms, look past the lions and crosses. You might just spot an early entrepreneur's hustle, a diplomat's cunning, or an explorer's wonder frozen in time. While European knights were painting lions and eagles on their shields, halfway across the world, samurai were stitching their family's mon onto silk banners with equal precision. Japan's heraldic tradition, though radically different in form, served the same vital purpose, compressing centuries of lineage and ambition into a single, unforgettable emblem. Take the Tokugawa clan's triple hollyhock leaves, a deceptively simple design that dominated battlefields and castle gates for over 200 years. Unlike Europe's flamboyant beasts, Mon embraced minimalism, a crane in flight for longevity, interlocking rings for unity, or a single bold stripe for unbroken resolve. Yet beneath this restraint pulsed the same fierce pride when rival warlords clashed. Their mon weren't just identifiers, they were psychological warfare, fluttering above armies like visual battle cries. Islamic blazons or rank spun heraldry into mesmerizing geometry, while Christian knights favored living creatures. Mamluk emirs and Ottoman sultans wielded abstract shapes charged with meaning. The stylized tiger stripes of the Zengid dynasty, weren't just decoration, they evoked speed and ferocity without depicting the forbidden animate form. Saladin's descendants stamped their coins with elegant calligraphic blazons, where the very curves of Arabic letters doubled as emblems of divine favor. Even functional objects became heraldic canvases. A ceramic bowl glazed with a vizier's lozenge pattern or a carpet woven with a tribe's ancestral zigzags turned everyday items into declarations of belonging. What's striking is how these disparate systems converged on universal human needs. The Aztec Cuauhtémoc, an eagle clutching a cactus, mirrored European crests in declaring divine mandate. Just swap the Christian cross for Huitzilopochtli's sign. In West Africa, Adinkra symbols like the Jai Nyame, except for God, stamped on cloth and shields functioned as philosophical heraldry, distilling complex proverbs into wearable wisdom. Even the Maori's Moko facial tattoos followed heraldic logic, intricate swirls that mapped ancestry and achievements onto living skin, making every warrior his own walking coat of arms. The differences, though, reveal cultural fingerprints, where European heraldry obsessed with lineage quartering shields to tally marriages like genealogical math. Japanese Mon often celebrated ideals over bloodlines. A merchant family might adopt a sailing ship to signal prosperity, while a tea master chose a crescent moon for refinement. Islamic blazons, avoiding figural representation, turned geometry into poetry. An 8-pointed star wasn't just a shape but a cosmic metaphor, its rays stretching toward infinity. Yet all shared one transformative quality: scalability. A mon small enough to grace a samurai's lacquered chopsticks could also loom 30 feet tall on a castle's curtain wall. A Mamluk blazon stamped on a spoon could equally dominate a mosque's minaret. This visual consistency created instant recognition long before modern branding manuals, proof that whether you were a French count or a Kyoto potter, controlling your symbol meant controlling your story. Perhaps most moving is how these systems outlasted their creators. The chrysanthemum crest of Japan's imperial house has weathered shoguns and wars, remaining unchanged for 1,000 years. The Lion of Castile still prowls Spain's royal standard, while the Ottoman Tughra's swirling monogram persists on Turkish government seals. They remind us that heraldry's true power wasn't in armor or silk, but in satisfying a timeless hunger to etch who we are into the world's memory, in shapes and colors that refuse to fade. Deciphering a coat of arms is like unlocking a medieval puzzle, one where every stroke of paint and curve of metal whispers secrets about the bearer's identity. Start with the shield's field, that blank canvas awash in color or pattern. This isn't just background, it's the foundation of the story. A solid crimson field might scream battlefield courage, while a sky blue expanse whispers steadfast loyalty. Stripes, checks, or even a starry night sky could unfold tales of alliances, trade routes, or celestial favor. The field sets the stage, but the real drama lies in the charges, the symbols scattered across it like actors in a play. Now zoom in on those charges. A golden lion rampant isn't just decoration. It's a declaration of raw, untamed bravery. A tower might hint at a family's role as castle defenders, while a ship could map mercantile routes across stormy seas. Pay attention to their posture too. A lion standing tall, rampant, roars defiance, but the same beast lying down couchant signals vigilance. Even plants carry weight. A rose in bloom celebrates unity, while a thistle pricks with national pride. Every charge was chosen with the precision of a poet selecting words for an epic. Colors aren't just aesthetic choices, they're a coded language. Gules red pulses with the lifeblood of warriors, while azure blue mirrors the unwavering sky. Sable black might mourn lost kin or boast resilience forged in hardship. Metals gleam with meaning too. or gold shines with divine favor, and argent silver reflects purity of purpose. Heralds followed strict rules: no color on color, no metal on metal, ensuring clarity even in the chaos of battle. A shield clashing red and gold wasn't just striking, it was a visual shout of "I spill blood for sacred duty." But the shield is only the opening chapter. Peer above it and you'll find the helm crowned by a crest, a 3D sculpture bursting with personality. This wasn't just for tournaments, it was a family's exclamation point. A dragon's wings might fan the air, or a fist could clutch a lightning bolt, each detail amplifying the shield's message. Flanking the shield, supporters, lions, griffins, even angels stand like loyal bodyguards, their presence often a royal privilege granted by kings. And don't overlook the motto, those few words curled on a ribbon beneath. Whether in Latin's timeless weight or Old French's courtly lilt, it's the bearer's personal manifesto. Dieu et mon droit, God and my right, staked a king's divine claim, while Festina lent, make haste slowly, revealed a strategist's patience. Some mottos teased with wordplay, others thundered with piety, all served as the final brushstroke on a masterpiece of identity. With practice, these elements snap together like pieces of stained glass. Suddenly, a coat of arms isn't just art, it's a biography in symbols, a battlefield shout frozen in time. The next time you spot one in a castle corridor or carved into an ancient tomb, pause, look closer. That's not just a shield, it's someone's soul armored in heraldry. Creating a coat of arms wasn't just artistic flair, it was high-stakes branding under rigid constraints. Picture a medieval herald scowling at a proposed shield design where red met purple. That violated the cardinal rule, no color on color. Why? Battlefield visibility. A knight charging through dust and rain needed his banner to scream allegiance instantly. So heralds enforced strict pairings, metals like gold or silver always paired with colors like blue or red, ensuring contrast even in twilight. This wasn't arbitrary snobbery. It was life or death UX design for an era when misidentification could mean a spear through the ribs. But within those rules flourished astonishing creativity. Take the Howard family's arms, a silver bend between 6 silver crosses on red. Simple, not quite. Each cross was meticulously spaced, their arms balancing symmetry with strategic asymmetry to stand out in a sea of shields. Or consider the Swiss canton of Zurich. Its blue and white split field with a gold lion wasn't just pretty. The lion's posture, one paw raised, signaled the town's right to high justice. Every curve and color had legal weight, like a constitutional amendment written in symbols. Modern heraldists still wrestle with these ancient constraints, proving design debates didn't end with the Middle Ages. When Canada's Nunavut territory sought arms in the 1990s, traditionalists clashed with Inuit elders over incorporating the igloo. Purists argued it wasn't proper heraldry, but the result, a blue shield with a golden inuksuck, became a masterclass in symbolic storytelling, blending Arctic heritage with medieval grammar. Even corporations now hire heraldic consultants. The logo for the London 2012 Olympics underwent rigorous scrutiny to ensure its jagged shapes and vibrant hues would have passed muster with 15th-century heralds. What's fascinating is how these designs balance individuality with universality. A well-crafted coat of arms feels as distinctive as a fingerprint, yet as readable as a stop sign. The secret, layered storytelling. The Portuguese House of Braganza's shield doesn't just flaunt 7 castles, it echoes the 7 Moorish fortresses their founder conquered. The Swedish 3 crowns aren't just regal, they're a coded reference to the biblical Magi, staking Sweden's claim as a northern Holy Land. This interplay of rules and rebellion birthed icons that transcend time, proof that the best design isn't about breaking constraints, but dancing elegantly within them. The thunder of charging knights may have faded, but the spirit of heraldry still marches on, stitched onto the sleeves of modern soldiers and painted across the fuselages of cutting-edge war machines. Take the 101st Airborne Division's screaming eagle patch, its wings spread wide in the same defiant pose as medieval raptors on Crusader shields. This isn't nostalgia, it's psychological continuity. When a paratrooper straps that eagle to his uniform, he's inheriting 8 centuries of airborne symbolism, linking the shock troops of Normandy to the eagle-cloaked huscarls of Hastings. Even the colors follow heraldic logic. The black and gold aren't arbitrary but chosen for maximum visibility, just as a knight's crimson and argent once cut through battlefield smoke. Modern military heraldry has evolved into a precise science. The U.S. Army Institute of Heraldry functions like a medieval college of arms, meticulously approving every chevron, crest, and motto. Their designs balance tradition with mission-specific storytelling. The 1st Cavalry Division's silhouette of a horse head nods to its mounted past, while the digital commo border whispers of 21st century warfare. Special Forces units take this further. Their patches often hide layered meanings, like the crossed arrows of the Green Berets, borrowed from Native American scouts but twisted into a symbol of unconventional warfare. These emblems aren't just identifiers, they're tribal tattoos for the military age, bonding soldiers through shared symbols as effectively as any feudal banner. Even the sky isn't free from heraldry's reach. Drone pilots operating from air-conditioned trailers thousands of miles from their targets still christen their reapers and predators with crest-like nose art. Some sport shark jaws echoing World War Roman II fighter planes, while others bear medieval beasts, griffins or dragons, as if to remind their operators that despite the joysticks and screens, they're part of an unbroken chain of warriors. The MQ-9 Reaper's official insignia, a winged death's head clutching a lightning bolt, could have been ripped straight from a Teutonic knight's shield, proving that even Silicon Age combat craves the visceral punch of ancient symbolism. What's fascinating is how these modern adaptations preserve heraldry's original functions. Unit patches prevent friendly fire just as surcoats once distinguished ally from enemy in the melee. The crossed rifles on an infantry badge telegraph specialization as clearly as a blacksmith's hammer on a guild crest. And when fallen soldiers are draped with their unit's flag at memorials, it echoes the medieval tradition of burying knights with their heraldic achievements, a final, silent testament to the identity they carried into battle. The real magic lies in heraldry's flexibility. Navy SEAL teams adopt Viking runes or Spartan helmets, drawing lines through history to ancient warrior cultures. Cyber warfare units fighting battles in ones and zeros design emblems with binary code and pixelated dragons. Even peacekeeping missions leverage heraldic thinking. The UN's olive branch and world motif is essentially a modern coat of arms for global diplomacy. This adaptability proves that while the battlefield has transformed beyond recognition, the human need to declare, "This is who we are," in bold, visual shorthand remains as vital as ever. So the next time you see a soldier's shoulder patch or a fighter jet's insignia, look closer. Behind that embroidery and enamel lies an unbroken thread stretching back to the first knight who daubed his shield with a personal emblem. The materials have changed: thread instead of paint, Velcro instead of leather straps, but the impulse remains identical: to armor oneself in symbols that speak when words fail, and to carry the weight of history into whatever battles lie ahead. Behind the iron gates of London's College of Arms, A quiet revolution unfolds not with swords and banners, but with scanners and servers. Founded in 1484, this unassuming building near St. Paul's Cathedral remains the beating heart of heraldic preservation, where vellum scrolls inscribed with medieval crests share shelf space with cutting-edge digital databases. The college's archivists aren't just caretakers, they're cryptographers decoding a visual language that nearly vanished during the Industrial Revolution, when steam engines and stock markets made family crests seem as obsolete as chainmail. Yet here, every fleur-de-lis and rampant lion is meticulously catalogued, from Richard III's boar emblem to the newly granted arms of tech entrepreneurs, proving heraldry's stubborn refusal to fade into history. What's groundbreaking is how these ancient symbols are vaulting into the digital age. Projects like the Heraldry Society's online armorials have transformed dusty genealogical records into searchable datasets, where a curious teenager in Tokyo can trace the evolution of the Habsburg double-headed eagle as easily as ordering takeout. High-resolution scans of 15th-century rolls of arms, once accessible only to scholars with white gloves, now bloom on smartphone screens with a tap. This isn't just convenience, it's democratization. Suddenly, a school teacher in Brazil can explore how Portuguese heraldry blended with indigenous Tupi motifs during colonization, or a graphic designer in Norway might borrow chevron patterns from Viking shields for a modern logo. The past isn't just preserved, it's plugged into the global creative grid. For those bitten by the heraldry bug, the tradition isn't locked behind museum glass, it's alive and open for enrollment. Modern heirs to castle-dwelling ancestors aren't the only ones registering coats of arms today. The College of Arms still grants new insignia following centuries-old rules, but now the applicants might be cybersecurity firms or female astrophysicists. A recent grantee, Dr. Emily Rappaport, whose arms feature a silver telescope crossed with a quill on a starry blue field, a far cry from the swords and shields of yore. Even cities without medieval roots are joining in. Shenzhen's municipal arms, granted in 2019, blend a golden circuit board pattern with a pearl representing its coastal heritage. Local heraldry societies worldwide have become hubs for this living history. At the New England Historic Genealogical Society, retirees and teenagers gather to painstakingly recreate ancestral arms using traditional gilding techniques. In South Africa, the Bureau of Heraldry documents Zulu Isiq beadwork alongside Afrikaner wagon symbols, creating a uniquely African armorial tapestry. These enthusiasts aren't cosplaying the Middle Ages, they're curators of a visual language that still resonates. When a Ukrainian family in Winnipeg stitches their ancestral trident onto a hockey jersey, or a Japanese-American designer fuses Kamen crests with Art Deco motifs, they're proving heraldry's endless adaptability. The true test of any language isn't just survival, it's evolution. Heraldry's digital resurrection means a ninth grader can now design a personal coat of arms for a history project, wrestling with the same symbolic choices that preoccupied medieval knights. Does a book represent scholarship or faith? Should the background be the blue of truth or the green of growth? Meanwhile, augmented reality apps let tourists point their phones at weathered castle shields, watching as animated lions spring to life with explanations of their historical context. This isn't your grandfather's genealogy, it's history remixed for the Instagram age. Perhaps the most poignant preservation happens in unassuming places. A librarian in Krakow digitizing a crumbling armorial discovers marginalia where some long-dead herald sketched alternative designs, a glimpse of creative doubt beneath the certainty of official records. A volunteer transcribing Welsh heraldic manuscripts stumbles on a forgotten rhyme explaining why the Griffith family chose 3 goats instead of 2. These aren't just data points, they're human fingerprints on history, proving that behind every symbol was someone wrestling with how to say, "This is who we are," in a language meant to outlast them. And now, thanks to pixels and passion, that language keeps finding new voices. Designing your own coat of arms isn't just about picking pretty pictures, it's about turning your life story into a visual anthem. Start with the symbols or charges that will anchor your design. A book might represent your thirst for knowledge, while an oak tree could stand for deep-rooted resilience. But don't just settle for the obvious. Maybe a beehive speaks to your collaborative spirit, or a compass points to your love of adventure. Every choice should feel like a piece of your personality etched in ink. Medieval knights had lions and eagles, but your kitchen table heraldry could feature a paintbrush for creativity, or even a Wi-Fi symbol for your tech-savvy edge. The key is authenticity. This isn't about impressing others. It's about creating a mirror for your values. Colors carry just as much weight as the symbols themselves. That deep blue you're drawn to, in heraldic terms, it's azure, the hue of loyalty and truth. A splash of crimson gules might reflect your passion, while forest green vert could whisper of growth and connection to nature. Even the metals matter. Gold or isn't just flashy, it's a nod to generosity and wisdom. But here's the fun part, modern heraldry lets you bend the rules. Forget strict medieval palettes if they don't resonate. A gradient sunset background or your favorite neon accent might not pass muster with a 15th century herald, but this is your legacy. Just remember the golden rule of design: keep it clean. A cluttered shield loses impact. 3 strong elements, a symbol, a color scheme, and a simple pattern often speak louder than a crowded collage. Arrangement is where the magic happens. Medieval heraldry had strict zones: chief top, a base bottom, dexter right, and sinister left, each carrying subtle meaning. Placing your mountain symbol at the base might ground your design, while a soaring bird at the chief could symbolize aspirations. But modern heraldry is more playground than protocol. Maybe you split your shield diagonally, dedicating one half to your cultural heritage and the other to future dreams. Or borrow from Japanese mon design, where simplicity reigns, a single bold stroke of a wave or leaf capturing everything. The best personal arms balance intentionality with flair, like a tattoo you'd never regret. What's thrilling is how this personal emblem can evolve. Medieval families added symbols for marriages and conquests. Yours might grow with life's milestones. A child's birth could inspire adding a cradle motif, or a career shift might call for swapping a briefcase for a sailboat. Unlike static logos, coats of arms are living documents. Print yours on holiday cards, etch it into a watch back, or even turn it into a custom emoji. Centuries from now, when descendants puzzle over your design, they won't just see colors and shapes, they'll hear your voice whispering across time, a visual heirloom that outlasts photos or social media posts. The real power of DIY heraldry lies in its democracy. Once the exclusive domain of nobles and knights, these symbols now belong to anyone with a story to tell. A barrister's arms might feature a steaming cup wreathed in coffee beans, while a teacher's could blend an open book with a rising sun. There's poetry in reclaiming this ancient language for everyday lives. After all, heraldry's greatest truth was never about bloodlines or battle. It was the universal hunger to say, "This is me," in shapes and shades that outlast words. So grab a sketchpad or a design app and start drafting your visual anthem. Who knows, the lion you doodle today might roar for generations. Beneath the gilded surface of heraldry's grandeur lies a simmering history of feuds and fakes. proof that a symbol is never just a symbol. Take the bitter clash between the Grosvenor and Scrope families in 14th century England, a legal battle so heated it required the king's intervention. Both houses claimed the right to bear a simple blue band across their shields, a design so elemental it sparked years of courtroom drama. Witnesses were hauled in aging knights squinting at faded tapestries, heralds flipping through dusty armorials, all to answer one question: who wore it first? The verdict: Grosvenor kept his stripes but had to tweak the shade, a compromise that left both sides seething. This wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about legacy. To lose your heraldry was to lose your story, your very claim to nobility. Fast forward to modern repatriation battles where colonial-era coats of arms become flashpoints. When Barbados removed the British lion from its national symbols after becoming a republic in 2021, it wasn't just updating a logo, it was surgically excising a centuries-old emblem of subjugation. Similar debates rage from South Africa to New Zealand, where indigenous motifs once relegated to the margins of European-style shields now demand center stage. The Maori Taniwa water spirit carving its way onto civic heraldry in Wellington isn't just decoration, it's a tectonic shift in who gets to dictate visual sovereignty. These conflicts reveal heraldry's dirty secret. For all its pomp and polish, it's always been a weapon of cultural combat. Even accidental plagiarism can ignite firestorms. In 2018, a Canadian brewery's logo, a bold lion clutching hops, drew fury from Czech diplomats. The design bore an uncanny resemblance to Bohemia's ancient crest, still fiercely guarded 700 years after its creation. Cue cease and desist letters invoking medieval charters, proving that in heraldry, time doesn't soften territorial instincts. Meanwhile, corporations playing fast and loose with historical symbols face backlash. A German beer brand's attempt to trademark a Teutonic Knight's cross had historians crying foul, while a Scottish clan society sued a video game developer for misusing their tartan-patterned crest. The message: dead knights can still throw legal punches from the grave. The darkest controversies lurk in heraldry's shadowy corners. Far-right groups across Europe have co-opted Crusader crosses and Viking runes, twisting ancient symbols into hateful banners. Medieval scholars now race to document original meanings before extremists erase them, like the swastika's tragic hijacking, but with mail-clad iconography. Conversely, some families quietly purge their arms of problematic imagery. A plantation owner's sugarcane sheaf swapped for neutral chevrons, or a conquistador's helmet replaced with an open book. These silent edits rewrite history one emblem at a time, proving that even the most time-worn symbols aren't set in stone. Yet within this turmoil lies heraldry's enduring relevance. Every lawsuit over a stolen fleur-de-lis, every protest against a colonial lion, confirms that these medieval emblems still pulse with life. They're not relics in a museum case but living artifacts, their meanings contested and reshaped with each generation. The next time you pass a city crest on a manhole cover or spot a family motto on a corporate seal, look closer. That innocuous design might just be a dormant volcano, waiting for the right moment to erupt with centuries of pent-up meaning. Heraldry isn't just surviving in the digital age, it's thriving, reinvented by a generation hungry for connection to the past. Across social media, hashtags like #heraldic_art and #coat-of-arms design rack up millions of views, while genealogy platforms report soaring interest in family crests. But this isn't mere nostalgia, it's a cultural renaissance where ancient symbols meet cutting-edge tech. Imagine pointing your phone at a weathered tombstone and watching as its faded coat of arms springs to life in augmented reality. The lions roar, the banners ripple, and the family motto whispers through your headphones. Startups like Herald AR are already prototyping this very experience, transforming static emblems into interactive storytelling portals. What's driving this revival? Partly, it's the democratization of history, where once you needed noble blood to claim a coat of arms, now platforms like Draw Shield let anyone design professional-grade heraldry with drag and drop tools. Online communities dissect historical armorials with the fervor of fantasy football fans analyzing stats, debating whether a 15th century boar's tusk curvature indicates a cadet branch or artistic license. Even corporate brands are getting in on the act. Whiskey distilleries and a sports teams commission modernized crests that blend medieval motifs with sleek, contemporary aesthetics. The metaverse is heraldry's next frontier. Digital identity matters more than ever, and what better way to assert yours than with a personalized emblem that transcends platforms? Early adopters flaunt animated coats of arms in virtual reality, their family lions morphing into pixelated guardians or their ancestral oak trees sprouting blockchain leaves. Crypto enthusiasts mint heraldic NFTs, embedding smart contracts that trace lineage on the blockchain. Meanwhile, historians collaborate with AI to reconstruct lost or damaged armorials, training algorithms to predict how time-faded colors might have originally blazed. Yet for all these futuristic twists, heraldry's core appeal remains timeless, the human craving for belonging. In an era of disposable digital identities, these symbols offer permanence, a way to tether oneself to something deeper than an algorithm's fleeting trends. When a teenager in Seoul adapts her great-grandfather's fishing village crest into a K-pop fan badge, or a Syrian refugee stitches his family's pre-war emblem into a jacket lining, they're participating in the same ritual as knights who rode under painted shields. The materials have changed, but the message hasn't. This is who we are, and this is what we carry forward. The most exciting developments lie in education. Interactive heraldry apps now gamify medieval history. Students earn badges by identifying charges in cathedral, stained glass, or solving heraldic murder mysteries where crests hold clues. Museums employ motion capture tech to let visitors wear digital surcoats, feeling the weight of a knight's symbols while learning their meanings. Even linguistic barriers crumble. Real-time translation tools decode Latin mottos or Old French blazonry, making this once exclusive language accessible to all. Critics might dismiss heraldry's revival as escapism, but they miss the deeper trend. In a world drowning in generic emojis and corporate logos, people crave symbols with layers, emblems that encode stories, values, and hard-won identities. A well-designed coat of arms does what no Instagram handle can. It collapses generations into a single, resonant image. Whether projected onto smart contact lenses or carved into heirloom jewelry, these ancient visual anchors remind us that while technology hurtles forward, our need to belong, to declare, to be known remains beautifully, stubbornly human. The future of heraldry isn't trapped in parchment, it's alive, evolving, and ready to mark the next chapter of our collective story. From the thunder of medieval battles to the quiet halls of museums, heraldry's symbols have endured as a testament to human ingenuity. They were more than art, they were a language of power, faith, and identity, a visual code that shaped kingdoms and whispered secrets across centuries. Imagine standing before a tapestry in some forgotten castle corridor, tracing your finger over a threadbare lion or a faded fleur-de-lis. You're not just looking at decoration, you're touching the DNA of history itself, a strand in the vast web of human storytelling. These emblems were the original social media, broadcasting lineage and loyalty without a single word. A knight's shield was his profile picture, his crest a viral hashtag, and the battlefield his trending page. But heraldry's genius wasn't just in its boldness, it was in its adaptability. The same golden lion that once spurred crusaders to charge became a merchant's mark of quality, then a brewery logo, and now perhaps a tattoo on a barista's wrist. That's the magic of these symbols, their vessels endlessly refilled with new meaning while never spilling the old. Today, as we decode these forgotten emblems, we're not just studying history, we're learning to see the world through medieval eyes where every color, curve, and creature carried weight. That Starbucks mermaid, she's a siren from a Venetian coat of arms, the eagle on your passport, a direct descendant of imperial heraldry. Even protest movements wield symbolism with heraldic precision, distilling complex ideals into banners that rally and unite. The language hasn't faded, it's evolved, proving that our need to belong, to declare, to be remembered is as fierce now as it was when knights raised their painted shields against the dawn. So what's your symbol? Maybe it's the book you'd place on your imaginary shield for your love of learning, or the mountain that represents the obstacles you've climbed. Heraldry invites us all to claim our place in this unbroken chain, not through bloodline, but through the stories we choose to tell about ourselves. Drop your favorite emblem in the comments or sketch your own coat of arms. Let's keep this ancient conversation alive. And if you've enjoyed unraveling history's hidden shorthand with me, hit subscribe because this channel is your gateway to more lost languages, from the runes of Vikings to the ciphers of Renaissance spies. The past is waiting to speak if you know